And just allow that flow of the energy of awareness inward. It's already been activated by the sacred mantras. Just allow that energy of awareness, of attention and intention. Allow that energy to just flow inwards. And allow that awareness to anchor in your breath. But as the awareness anchors in your breath, let it anchor as low in your abdomen as you can. There's a spot about 2 inches below your navel, just about 2 inches below the navel, called the Swadhisthana chakra. Allow the awareness of the breath to anchor there, so that as you're taking the inhalations and exhalations, you're taking them from this sacred energy center. Swadhisthana literally means the place of the self. Sthana is place. Swa is self. So it is the place, the seat of the self. Allow the breath to be anchored there. And as you take the next inhalation, allow the breath to rise. It rises gently and smoothly from the Swadhisthana chakra up through the energetic body as it flows up through the physical body. And it rises higher and higher, slowly and smoothly, until that breath reaches your third eye center. what we call the Agya chakra, just between the eyebrows. And then exhale and let the breath drop back down to the Swadhisthana chakra. Take the inhalations and exhalations at your own pace. And don't worry if you can't carry the breath all the way to the third eye on one unbroken, gentle inhalation. Don't worry. Just carry it as high as it will naturally go, and then let it drop. But regardless of how high the actual breath goes, allow that power of attention and intention to be focused onto the third eye. So the energy is there, magnetically raising the breath upward toward it, gently and smoothly. If the mind wanders, just gently bring it back. Don't yell at it. Don't judge it. Don't tell yourself stories. Just gently bring the awareness back to the breath as it rises higher and higher on each inhalation. And as you drop deeper and deeper into the core of the self on each exhalation. Slowly and gently, bring the palms of the hands together at chest level in Namaste. And rub the palms of your hands gently together. Press them into your closed eyes. slowly open the eyes and lower the hands. Welcome to Satsang. Especially welcome on this very special, sacred full moon night of Hanuman Jayanti. How can I be like Hanuman? Perfect question to begin tonight. So, as I shared in the Arti, Hanumanji is this incredible embodiment of the power of devotion, of this power of surrender. All of these feats he did, these miracles he did, I take God's name and it happens. It happens. And it's not false humility. It's not saying, oh, it's, God just made it happen. It's really, that is his experience. He's just a divine channel through which that power flows. He also is a beautiful embodiment of, we talk in here a lot about sort of the different levels of existence that exist simultaneously. And we may talk about, sometimes people will use words like higher and lower, but I try to avoid that because they're all beautiful levels. And levels of the physical body, this human incarnation, the current intersection of time and space in which we have a body and we have a role and a story. And there's something beautiful in that. It's the space in which our Dharma gets unfolded. And then, of course, there's the level of just oneness with God. And Hanumanji says so beautifully when Bhagwan Ram asks him, "Who are you?" In essence, he says, when I forget the truth of who I am, the highest truth of who I am, when I forget that, I am your das, I am your servant, I serve you, I love you. Not that there's anything wrong with that, not when I'm an awful, horrible person, not when I'm a failure spiritually. Because a lot of us, when we are in that experience of being in the body, in the humanity, mired in our humanity, there's a bit of guilt and shame that goes along with it when we're on a spiritual path of, oh my God, I lost it, I forgot. And Hanumanji, it's so beautiful, when I forget who I am, I'm your servant. I'm your das. And that's beautiful. It's an exquisite relationship. So it's not that I forgot myself and therefore I am a spiritual failure. But just in those moments that I consciously, unconsciously, purposely, by accident, forget who I am, because we spoke a few nights ago about the bhakti tradition and how in the bhakti tradition we consciously, willingly forget that we are one with God so that we can worship God. Because being in love feels so beautiful. So whether it's a conscious forgetting, a purposeful forgetting, or an unconscious, accidental forgetting, either way, when I forget the core truth of who I am your das, your servant, your devotee, I love you. And when I remember who I am, then I am you, one with you. And it's this beautiful teaching of these different levels, neither being wrong or right, but there obviously being a higher eternal truth in our oneness with God than in our physical form. And yet they both exist, and they both exist simultaneously. And as long as we hold it with tenderness and devotion, and we don't get stuck in the meanness of it. Because even in Hanumanji's meanness, like I'm separate from you, I'm still devoted to you. It's not meanness, aren't I so great? Did you see what I did? I should get, a gold star, and I should be appointed the, something major of Ayodhya when you go back, like because of me, it all happened. You better make me, you're second in line. Nothing like that. Even when I forget myself, I am devoted to you. Even when I'm mired in my humanity, I'm devoted to you. And so it shows us how even when we are not remembering that we are one with God, that it's not all hope is lost. It's not we're a failure. We can use that time, again, either purposely or when it happens not on purpose, when we're unable to access that experience of oneness. To use that as a time to just say, all right, how beautiful. This is the time for me to practice my devotion. Not able to feel one with God? Okay. This is a season of bhakti then. Season of devotion. And isn't that beautiful? It's also a path. It's its own path to liberation, its own path to moksha. It's not a lower path. It's just a different path. And then when we have those moments, those experiences, those seasons, those remembrances of being one with God, well, then we know I am you. And then the lover and the beloved become one. But we're able to taste that experience of the divine in either and both. So it's sort of something for everyone, path of devotion, not you have to be like this and then. Even if when you're in the time of forgetting who you are, no problem. Be like me, be devoted. And he shows us the way. And there's so many stories, but my other favorite story that I love is the story of him with the pearl necklace. Because a lot of us start to value valuables. And we've been kind of brainwashed to think about the value of something as in how much it would catch on the market. How much did you pay? How much could you sell it for? That becomes the value of something. And of course, acquire a lot of things, accumulate a lot of expensive things, and discover how miserable you still are, and you realize, there actually isn't much value in any of that at all. For anything that I really want, for that which I'm really looking for, all these valuables filling up my shelves, filling up my house, filling up my room. And I still can't sleep. I'm still depressed. So where's the value in the valuables? And Hanumanji gives it in such a beautiful way. After the war, Sita Ma gifts him this beautiful pearl necklace. She says, like a mother to the child, she says, but now be careful, Hanuman. This is a very precious necklace. Take good care of it. You know, it's like when your mom decides you're old enough to have something nice. And she says, now here it is, but like, don't leave it in the gym at school. You know, put it away in your locker. Take care of it. Don't lose it. So she says, take care of it. This is very precious. And so Hanumanji takes that necklace and he starts to look at each individual pearl, and he looks at it this way, and then he looks at it this way, and he looks at it this way, and he then puts it in his mouth and he bites it in half and again looks and then spits it out. And then he goes to the next one, and again he examines it from every angle, bites it in half, examines it, spits it out. One by one he's doing this, and finally Sita Ma can't take it anymore, and she says, Hanuman, what are you doing? I just told you this was a very precious necklace. You're biting them in half, you're spitting them out. Don't you know how to take care of valuables? Essentially. And he says, because of course he knows what's really valuable, and he says, Sita Ma, you said this is precious. If it's precious, that means my Ram is here. That means God is in these. So I'm looking for Ram in the pearls. And in the ones where I don't see him, well, I figure those must be the ones that are not so precious, so I'm spitting them out. And I'm waiting to find the one that's really precious, that has my Ram in it. And it's such a beautiful reminder that essentially wherever God is, that's heaven. That's value. And it can happen in a super big mansion, and it can happen in a hut. Totally irrelevant. Has nothing to do with what the walls are made of. Lanka was a city made of gold, and essentially it was hell. It was led and headed by and terrorized by Ravan. Dwarka is a city made of gold. Heaven, headed by Bhagavan Krishna. So it wasn't the gold that's the problem or the key. It has to do with who's in charge. So that's the teaching is in our lives. It's not that pearls keep God away. You can have pearls, no problem with that. You can have a city made of gold, no problem. Just make sure it's Dwarka, not Lanka. Just make sure that the head of your city of the self is the divine and not the demon. And so it's not in the things. It's in the presence of God. Wherever God is, I mean, if we said for a moment there was no option of Dwarka, Dwarka was of another yuga, gone. Okay, so our option is city made of gold, Lanka, or a hut in the woods with Ram. Where would you rather be? Right? So it's all about where God is. Where we experience, and of course God is everywhere, but where we experience the presence of God. That's heaven. And so it's just such a beautiful message for our lives of don't focus on the external trappings. If they're there, fine. They're not there, fine. Focus on the presence of God. Because wherever that presence of God is, that's where everything is. So that's a little bit of how to be like Hanuman, but I think just singing the Hanuman Chalisa and praying to him for the Shakti of Bhakti, the power of devotion, the power to be devoted. Is such an incredible power to just learn how to offer yourself. Not like, oh my God, this is what I'm stuck with, or this is what I have to do in my tapasya because I want to be enlightened and so I've got to, be devoted first. But the joy of devotion. I mean, Hanumanji he's not just a macho hero, but he's a joyful being. Shares joy, spreads joy, gives. I mean, he's an embodiment of this love of devotion, of being devoted. Like, what else? What else? I mean, he's just waiting. Please give me something to do. Please tell me something, some way I can be of service. Just keep me near you. And so it reignites in us that power of just being devoted. And again, it doesn't matter what form of God or with form or without form. It doesn't matter what your religion is or how you connect with the divine. Could be devoted to Mother Nature. Could be devoted to the supreme source of energy and spirit in the universe. Doesn't matter. But just recognizing that love is the greatest power we have. And when it's love for God, it's the power beyond powers. And then everything becomes not only possible, but happening. Other questions? Yes.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
The last couple of months, the world has been stunned by the development of artificial intelligence. We've seen chats that can get into law school. We've seen image generators that can produce the most amazing images. And this development is exponential. So where are we going? I think there's a lot of talk about the practical consequences, but I would like to hear from you about the spiritual, theological perspective. What is AI?
So, I am neither a computer engineer nor am I clairvoyant. So I can't give you the where are we going, either from the technological side or from the clairvoyant side. What I can tell you is that we know that technology is going to keep increasing and expanding. It's never going to go backwards. The nature of technology is it's going to build on each other. Since the Industrial Revolution began, since the time where we first discovered steam engine for transportation, nothing goes backwards. You can follow it. So we go from a horse and buggy, and then we develop a steam engine for a train, and then we develop slowly how to make that work in a car, and then slowly. We're never going to find ourselves back on horse and buggies. Even if our world got so polluted that every single human being was going to die of lung cancer or asthma, there's no country in the world that I could conceive of where they say, I know, let's go back to horses and buggies, and where that was going to work. There might be people who would suggest it, but it's just not going to happen. As long as we have democracies, as long as we have free will, as long as we have people having free choice, you're not going to uninvent motors. Now, technology is starting to get more clean. So instead of running on diesel, then they start to run on petrol, then they start to run on natural gas, then they start to run on electricity. So it gets cleaner and cleaner. I hope we'll someday have, solar operated vehicles. But it's going to get cleaner, but it's not going to go backwards. Similarly with our computer technology, it's just going to keep expanding. You cannot go backwards. Sadly, I would love to uninvent social media. No such luck. The question then becomes, okay, now that these things exist and we cannot uninvent them, how do we turn them into tools we can use? Fire can burn down your house or cook your meals. Depends on how you use it. AI is like that. We can't uninvent it. We can't go backwards. It's here. Now, there may come a time, depending on how it moves, there certainly may come a time in which countries come together in the way that they've done so far, only about nuclear weapons, in which post-World War II, countries came together, the UN was founded, and they started saying, okay, wait, this is too dangerous. We're going to start to have some international rules about what is allowed. But as we've all seen, most countries don't listen to that. Countries are still stockpiling nuclear weapons. Countries who are still selling technology to each other. Countries who aren't supposed to have the technology are building the bombs. So even an entire system like a United Nations that comes together in all of these pacts and acts and treaties internationally about something that literally could obliterate all of creation in a matter of a few moments. Here we are, more than 75 years later, more, almost 80 years later. It still exists. People are still doing it, working with it, stockpiling it. It's still a threat. So I don't have any hope that we're going to get some kind of international moratorium on that which can be invented, created, done with artificial intelligence. I think it's just going to keep increasing. And I think that the more sanctions you try to put on people, the more things are just going to go into dark web and underground and whatnot. The question for all of us becomes, okay, it's a tool. Now a computer can write an essay for you. As I just today actually was shown how it's interesting that you ask it, because just today I was shown some of the incredible things that it can do. So all right, there are things that every one of us sitting here grew up having to do that the next generation is going to grow up not having to do, because AI will be able to do it for them. In the same way that we all had to memorize phone numbers, pick up any teenager off the street, take away their phone, and ask them to recite for you the phone numbers of their 10 closest friends, their parents. I would bet that a huge percentage of them couldn't do it. Why bother? I have my phone. My phone can do it. My phone knows. I just say, call mom. Why do I have to know the number? Okay, it's neither good nor bad. It just is. There will be a lot of things that we did that they won't have to do. Education is going to have to reinvent itself, like it did when calculators were invented. Right? Now you no longer need to know how to do long division. You've got a machine that'll do it. Why bother learning it? I mean, has anyone actually, raise your hand if in the last week or two or year you've actually pulled out a pen and paper to do a long division problem for some reason other than you're a mathematician or you're taking a math exam or you need to be able to do it without the use of a calculator. I mean, if you want to figure out how many, dollars there are in 6.5 crores of rupees, you're going to pull out a piece of paper and, going to type it in the phone. How many dollars in 6.5 crores of rupees? We have a machine that does it. Education's going to have to reinvent itself. How are we going to teach kids' brains now that we have these machines? It's going to be a fascinating time. I don't know what they're going to decide to allow in school, what they won't. But they'll reinvent themselves. With the help of neurologists, we'll figure out how to engage and stimulate and teach children's brains without making them learn how to do things that they're never going to have to do. Because they've got a machine on their wrist at all times that does it for them. A lot of people are going to be out of jobs, sadly. Countries are going to need to figure out what that means. We're going to have to, together as societies, figure out what does that mean for our workplace. Because I don't think it makes sense, let's look at India for a moment. So if you drive through a lot of India, you see every year in October-ish, November-ish time, it's been less over the last several years when the current central government has had a very, very strong roads and transport ministry. But up until several years ago, you would drive through the streets of India in October, November, and what you would see is people on the side of the road laying down pebbles and leaves, and then pouring, made right there in a big tube, like a big steel pipe thing that was open, hot asphalt, and they'd be pouring it on, and roads would be diverted and closed because they're making new roads, because in the rainy season every year, the roads that they make, like this, with leaves and pebbles, don't last in the monsoon. So every year these people were making new roads. And every time that I would drive by that, you think, this is an interesting situation. On the one hand, there's great road building technology. It's not rocket science. It exists all over the world. It does not require people to be on the side of the road working with hot melted asphalt and leaves and patting it down and being there while they're literally burning pebbles into asphalt, sucking the fumes on the side of the road. And yet, it keeps people employed every year. There's a huge mass of population who are employed in the remaking of the roads every autumn. Now, is that good or is that bad? It doesn't matter. We're not putting judgment on it. We're just saying there's two ways to look at something. But eventually, technology development catches up. And even in places with huge masses of unskilled labor, it starts to become unacceptable to have roads that fall apart every year and have to be rebuilt every year with leaves and pebbles. And so they start doing it in ways where roads last a decade. And then we have to figure out some other way of employing these people. And I think that's what we are going to be facing as a global community is, okay, here are the jobs that are no longer going to need to be done by people. What can we have these people do? And I see that as actually a great and beautiful opportunity. I mean, I'd love to get them all out planting trees. It's also unskilled labor. It's not like we have to somehow magic wand them into people with MBAs who can run companies. Get them out planting trees. Get them being the ones guarding the trees that have been planted. Making sure that they stay alive. Get them picking up trash from along the banks of water bodies. I mean, there's all sorts of things that can be given as unskilled labor. And I think every layer of the workforce that we look at, there are ways to employ people. It just requires creativity. And I think that's the beautiful opportunity that we now have as societies, is to reinvent what is work that as a society we are prepared to pay for. And that's an exciting time. It's scary. Oh my God. What are we all going to do when a computer can do everything that we do? Huh? Can you plant a tree? Can you take care of it? And lastly, I think what's going to be really exciting is we're starting to look at the whole Dharma of technology. It used to be just a thing, like it was a computer, it was a machine. There was no sense of morals or values about it. As long as children weren't able to access pornography, or buy drugs, or buy guns, it's just a machine. But now we're going to start to actually have to look at values and morals and ethics and dharma of the machine itself, aside from what kids can see or purchase on it. And I think that's going to be an exciting place. As technology becomes more and more a part of our life, to actually have to look at the Dharma of technology. I mean, I can see university courses on it. The Dharma of technology, or the, ethics of technology. Probably they already exist in some level. And I think that's exciting. I think forcing us to look deeper about everything. including things that we would consider just an object, is a really exciting place to be. Great. Other questions? Yeah. And then we'll come back to you.
I pay my reverence to your lotus feet first of all. My question is, in Sanatan there is a concept of Prakriti and Purusha, which is also referred to as Shiva and Shakti. My question is, recently I have been reading interpretation on the Yoga Sutra.
Can you speak just a little louder?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
So
I got the part about Purusha and Prakriti. Yes.
Prakriti and Purusha,
Yes.
which is also referred to as Shiva and Shakti.
Yes.
My question is, today I have been reading an interpretation of the Yoga Sutras, wherein it was written that it was by a revered Guru Swami Satyananji, and it was written that Prakriti only exists for Purusha, and it was written that Prakriti is like a horse and the Purusha is like a rider. Both come together to cross a forest, and the Purusha rides off the horse, which means to attain liberation. And the role of the Prakriti is, which is horse, to again go back to the forest and take another rider and make him cross the forest. So what I want to understand is, in this Yoga Sutras or in the whole philosophy, is the Prakriti the feminine energy and the Purusha the masculine energy? And if I am born as a woman, am I disqualified to be enlightened?
Great question.
Also,
Are you just a horse? Yeah, right.
yes, and also even in Jaina philosophy, one of the Tirthankaras said that women need to be born again to be enlightened. Even in the Buddhist philosophy, like one of the Jatakathas mentions that women can become arahant, can liberate themselves, but they cannot become samyak sambuddha, which means the one who is trikaldarshi. So what I want to know is this: is Prakriti the feminine energy? And if it yes, that why I should not work for my own liberation, and why do I need to have a male guru? Like why this? And then genuinely, with the whole of my heart, I asked for this doubt to my teacher, who responded to me that men, the one who is already liberated, need not to be liberated, which means I did not got convinced. So please answer. Thank you.
Great, great. Did everybody hear the question? In short, for those of you who didn't hear it all, it's a question about the role of women and femininity in the Hindu, Buddhist, Jain traditions and teachings of Prakriti and Purusha, and this idea that Purusha is that which ends up enlightened and Prakriti is that which is here and it's feminine. And so as women, essentially, is there any hope for us to be enlightened? So first of all, there's a big difference between a woman's body, a man's body, and masculine and feminine energies. We all have both energies in our bodies. So first of all, realize that in your woman's body, you have the energy of divine feminine, and you have the energy of divine masculine. Sometimes there are these beautiful paintings or deities that you see. I actually have a beautiful one in my room that's Krishna and Radha, but they're merging into one. It's sort of half and half as one. But even to the extent in which, like, one side is Radha's body, but then her arm is coming out from this side of Krishna's body. So it's one being, both energies. And we speak about this a lot. So that's important to realize also, is that there's a whole spiritual tradition of the energies both coming together. Now, yes, Prakriti is the feminine energy, as is Shrishti, as is Shakti, which to me is really beautiful, because Prakriti, I mean, Sanskrit is so deep and full and has so many meanings. But we translate Prakriti frequently as nature. We translate Shrishti usually as creation. And Shakti, of course, is the power through which creation is created, through which nature is created. And to me that's very beautiful, that feminine energy is the power of that which is, and the energy through which it is made manifest. Purusha is seen much more as the unmanifest, which is why there's this metaphor of a rider and a horse. Meaning the unmanifest gets associated for a certain period of time with the manifest for this particular journey. But that's the same thing as saying your soul and your body. Your spirit, I mean, this is a metaphor to understand soul and body. Your soul, your spirit, we'll call it Purusha. You could also call it Atma. Has no form, is formless, is infinite. Temporarily gets associated with a form, a Prakriti, nature. This is nature. This is made up of the 5 elements. It's essentially just like this tree. It's nature. They get associated temporarily for this particular journey that my soul, my Jivatma, is undertaking. But that doesn't mean that my Jivatma is masculine. The Jivatma has no gender. It's not a sense of the feminine part of you stays and the masculine part of you goes. Or if you are here in a female body, your soul is somehow more stuck than if you were here in a male body. No. At the risk of running contrary to those who have said the things that you've quoted, I don't believe it. I just don't believe it. It's not my experience. And it's not the experience of so many enlightened female. I mean, look at Mirabai. Okay? Let's not even look at like Sita and Radha, who are scriptural beings, and there could even be a debate about, what their form. Let's not even go there. Let's look purely historically. Let's just take Mirabai. Female body. Not just enlightenment, but such complete moksha that her physical body also just merged. Not only the soul, but the physical body itself, the prakriti of her itself, essentially everything other than her shoes, I think, merged straight into Bhagavan Krishna. Right? I mean, she enters the temple. The one that had become two becomes one. So if there's ever a doubt I mean, there was such a moksha that it's not just, oh, the soul merges. The body merges, it's like the whole full package deal of her. Every bit of her. The tangible, the intangible, the masculine energies, the feminine energies. That which was eternal, that which she had put on that morning. Merged straight into the divine. So do not think for a moment, not even a moment, that you are somehow lesser than, disqualified in any way. Don't think like that at all. It absolutely is not true. I can't explain why it would have been said other than for the reasons that there's so much that we know has been said in the history of religion that has nothing to do with God and everything to do with socializing societies the way we want them to be socialized, keeping people in order. And so we say, well, God says. It has nothing to do with God. And everything to do with agendas of some people and some traditions to keep certain orders and hierarchies and roles in society. Yeah, you've got full power, full potential, and with full devotion, it's there for you. But I would say at the same time as you work for total moksha, we all, both women and men, but as someone in a woman's body, I speak from that. There's such a beautiful opportunity in the body before we drop the body, while we're in it, to use this body as a gift of bringing love, of bringing caring, of bringing service, of bringing joy to so many. So work for that complete liberation, that complete moksha. But not after you've dropped your female body, but while you're still in it. Look at Ananda Mahima, right? I mean, just look locally. Look recently. We don't even have to go back as far as Mirabai and Rajasthan. Look locally. Look at Ananda Mahima. Right? I mean, there's so many. So yes, it's very much there for you. Beautiful. Beautiful, yeah.
Follow-up question on AI. So, yeah, it's exponential development. So scientists say we're going to reach a point where AI gains consciousness. Right now, it's just an aggregation of our knowledge, our consciousness, but it will gain its own consciousness. And
I don't believe that,
no?
by the way.
Okay.
No, I do not. Consciousness cannot be programmed. Now, a conscience could be. You could train a machine to make value judgments, ethical judgments. This is right or wrong. You could train that. It obviously would be based on the programmer. But, you could do it a good job. You could give it lots of different options and opportunities and choices. And so you could give it a conscience that had been programmed and get it to make decisions in alignment with that conscience. And I even think technologically you could teach it so it could make a decision, and then you could say, that hurt my feelings. And then hope that it would make a different decision in the future because it has learned from the fact that its decision hurt my feelings. But consciousness is very different. Consciousness means I am able to witness myself. Let's say somebody does something and it makes me angry. Consciousness is the ability to step back, first to say, I am watching anger arise in me. I am aware that anger is arising, but I am aware that I am not the anger. I can see my pulse rate go up. I can see my blood pressure rise. I can see my brain start to fill with these thoughts. I can feel my cheeks flush, but I am aware that I am not my pulse or my blood pressure or my cheeks or the neurons in my brain having these thoughts. And then even to go a step back, where I am aware, I am anchored in the awareness that is aware that I am watching anger arise. You can never teach a machine to do that. Because you can't turn that into zeros and ones. I mean, remember that the very building blocks, like our physical body's building blocks, forget our spirit for a moment. Physical body's building blocks are molecules of carbon, of nitrogen, of hydrogen, of oxygen, of all of the natural. Without those, you couldn't build a human being. You couldn't say, well, I'm going to take away your oxygen and your hydrogen and your carbon, build me a human anyway that's exactly like you. Can't. We know what the building blocks are. There are no tangible building blocks to consciousness. It's why as our physical bodies change, you don't have a cell of your body today that was there 9 years ago. But there's a continual consciousness. Your body keeps regenerating. But you have an unbroken consciousness from the time you were about 2 years old. What is that? It's not in your molecules. It's not in the carbon or the hydrogen or the oxygen. It's not physical. You could cut away slowly every single part of my body. And until I physically died, I would identify as I. I now no longer have arms. I now no longer have legs. I now no longer have ears. I mean, it's morbidly graphic, but if you visualize it, as long as I have consciousness, you could slice me away piece by piece and I would keep saying I. It doesn't exist in the building blocks of my body. It's intangible. You can't build that out of zeros and ones, which are the building blocks of machines. So I don't see any way whatsoever in which a machine is going to develop consciousness until and unless, the divine decided to put souls into machines. Might God at some point, I don't know. Maybe. But if it's something that God decides to do, I'm not worried about it. It's certainly not going to happen automatically. It's not going to be like a virus that jumps from an animal to a human and we don't know how it happens. It's not like we're going to accidentally, give our soul to a computer. Now it's got it and now they can all have them. It would have to be put there by the divine, in which case it doesn't worry me at all. But I don't see it happening. Have a wonderful, wonderful, beautiful rest of your evening. We've got probably quite soon a Sundarkand Path starting on the banks of Ganga, right at our Hanumanji deity. It's the recitation of the Sundar, means beautiful. Kand means chapter, which is the chapter of the Ramayana that is dedicated to Hanumanji, which is why it's beautiful. So it's about usually approximately 2 hours, depending on how quickly the chanter chants it, somewhere between an hour and a half and 2.5. It'll start at 8:30. It's beautiful. Invite you all to go and join that. And I look forward to seeing you all